If you've seen images of people in North Korea, you've likely noticed this clothing style, this gray to beige to brown colored material with a glossy or shiny appearance. This textile is called Vinylon, and it's one of the most fascinating technologies from North Korea. Often called the national fiber of the country, Vinylon is an artificial fiber uniquely popular within North Korea. Vinylon was first synthesized by Ri Sung-gi, a Korean scientist who worked as a chemist in Imperial Japan. After Korea gained independence following World War II, Ri moved back to Korea. He worked briefly at what is now Seoul National University, and was in Seoul when North Korean forces took control of the city in 1950. He was offered a research position in the north, which he accepted. Ri brought his expertise and knowledge of Vinylon production, which North Korea prefers to spell Vinylon with an A, to the north. It's worth mentioning how Vinylon is produced, and why North Korea took such a keen interest in this fairly niche material. Textiles in general are difficult to produce, needing very specific conditions to be worked into anything useful. They're needed for the production of many other things, everything from shoes to sutures, fishing nets to seatbelts, furniture to circuit boards. Most countries don't have a reliable, large-scale source of textiles within their borders. This problem ranges from being an import the country needs to keep an eye on to a national security issue. The Soviet Union famously deemed it an important enough predicament to drain the Aral Sea to increase cotton production. Textile production is expensive to both begin and do, needing specialized factories and equipment, as well as continuous year-round work to keep production going. A lot of textiles also just plain can't be done at significant scale. Good luck clothing a whole nation with mink fur. Korea, being a cold, mountainous place, isn't suited for the production of cotton or flax. Korea does have a small amount of yarn and wool production, but not nearly enough to meet demand. So, thankfully for them, synthetic fibers and textiles were invented in the early 20th century. Now, take a wild guess about what Vinylon is made out of, because unless you're familiar with this branch of chemistry, I doubt you'll get it right. I'll give you a hint. Fully synthetic fibers, like Vinylon and nylon, are actually plastics. Vinylon is made out of limestone and coal. Yes, clothing made out of rocks. It's a relatively simple synthetic fiber to make. First, anthracite coal is crushed up with limestone to produce calcium carbide, which is then turned into acetylene, the same thing used for welding. Combined with acetic acid, this is turned into vinyl acetate. This turns into polyvinyl alcohol, which can be spun into fibers when combined with formaldehyde. Sounds kind of complicated, but simpler than a lot of other synthetic textiles. All of the ingredients are common industrial chemicals, so everything used is fairly cheap and easy to acquire. This actually isn't the original process. Ri's first version of Vinylon used petroleum instead of coal. Let's talk a bit about some of the properties of Vinylon and why it isn't used much outside of North Korea. First, Vinylon is a very tough material. This is useful in a country like North Korea, which can't make denim or other traditionally durable fabrics. This comes with the downside of it being very stiff, and it's generally described as an itchy and uncomfortable material to wear. Because it is literally made from rocks, it's extremely difficult to dye, hence why it usually only comes in very drab colors. This is balanced with the upside of it being a good heat insulator, also being resistant to staining and chemical damage. It's a good electrical insulator too, and is sometimes used in wiring, but that's more of a secondary use. There's only one modern product I could find outside of North Korea that uses Vinylon. Those stupid Fall Raven backpacks, they're made out of Vinylon. The company specifically said they don't source the Vinylon from North Korea, which is a little funny. It sucks because Vinylon is exceptionally durable. I want Vinylon clothes. Who cares if it's itchy? I want a shirt that lasts me a decade. Vinylon is a cultural phenomenon in North Korea, as iconic as Kim Il-sung and that one smoking chimpanzee. North Korea follows the homegrown ideology of Juche, an offshoot of communism that emphasizes self-reliance of the country. Since North Korea can't produce many natural textiles, they needed Vinylon. Kim Il-sung famously proclaimed Vinylon to be Juche fiber. With help from the Soviet Union, North Korea began construction of a huge Vinylon plant in Hungnam in 1961. This complex, nicknamed Vinylon City, could produce everything needed for the textile. The facility has more than 1.5 million square feet of factory floor and 500 kilometers of industrial pipes. At peak production in 1973, the factory was making 10,000 tons of Vinylon a year, over 300 million meters of fiber. Vinylon City was able to meet the demand for textiles in North Korea for several decades at least, and was held as a shining example of the Juche ideology in the country. A second Vinylon City was planned to be constructed in the mid-1980s, but this never came to fruition. What happened to Vinylon City past the 1980s is hard to discern. It's generally believed to have shut down in the 90s. During this time it experienced significant deterioration, and many of the machines and raw materials were allegedly looted. Sources I could find said it was reopened in 2010, but satellite imagery from the 2000s clearly shows smokestacks working and vehicles parked. North Korean satellite images have become a theme on my channel, huh? There's rumors that only a few parts of Vinylon City are reopened, making a chemical I'm not even going to try to pronounce. It's a rocket fuel allegedly used in North Korea's ballistic missiles. In 2017, Kim Jong-un said he wanted to revitalize the factory, and that's the last thing heard about Vinylon City. Current satellite images show the facility in a mix of seemingly deterioration and deliberate deconstruction. The reason for the decline of Vinylon City was the coal used in North Korea's version of the recipe. North Korea was using coal for anything that needed energy, and this presented a few problems. As North Korea depleted their easy-to-access coal, they were needing to spend more money and time for less and less coal. Anthracite coal, a kind that already needs very deep and expensive mines, was nearly gone. Remember that anthracite coal was what North Korea was using as one of the two main ingredients in Vinylon. Anthracite coal was being increasingly redirected to fuel the country's power plants, which were increasingly inefficient and more resource-demanding. It was a snowball effect that threatened to crush the nation's economy. A common theme in North Korean history, the Soviet Union and China offered to help North Korea by switching the country to petroleum and diesel for the energy needs. Kim Il-sung, not wanting to compromise Juche and the independence of the nation, rejected these offers. Instead, he made a risky gamble, turning North Korea into a nuclear nation. Electricity shortages had begun in the country in the early 70s, though aid from the Soviet Union largely mitigated them. Still, the clock was ticking, and North Korea had to find their own solution. Ri Sung-gi was made the head of North Korea's Atomic Energy Research Institute, where he worked on developing nuclear reactors for the country. He also allegedly helped with the early stages of North Korea's nuclear weapons program. North Korea, for the most part, has succeeded in developing its nuclear industry. North Korea has built research reactors, uranium enrichment plants, and of course, nuclear weapons. North Korea has not, however, built a working nuclear power plant. There is one they've been trying to get working for over a decade. Very little is known about the state of this plant, but it's currently estimated to be in a testing phase. The Vinylon industry of North Korea never fully recovered from the electricity problem, and Vinylon has slowly fallen out of style in North Korea. With better trade relations with China and Russia, the textiles of those countries have outcompeted the domestic alternatives. More colorful, comfortable, and versatile foreign fabrics have killed the main market for Vinylon in the country. But Vinylon remains needed for industrial needs. North Korea's conveyor belts, for example, mainly use Vinylon. According to recent defectors, almost nobody in North Korea still wears Vinylon. The last user of it for clothing, the military, has given it up in recent years. It was difficult to properly dye camouflage patterns on it, and it would become very heavy when wet. Modern North Korean uniforms use the same materials as the rest of the world, mainly nylon, cotton, and Kevlar. The decline and obsolescence of Vinylon isn't a surprise. It was always meant to be a temporary solution in a longer strategy. North Korea never did develop a better fiber, or make an alternative domestically. Vinylon, Juche fiber, has been relegated as another strange product from North Korea. Its uses are filled by foreign-made materials. The once proud symbol of Juche and North Korean independence has been supplanted. Maybe one day Vinylon can find uses again. North Korean researchers still work to improve it, but that day seems far in the future.
You have reached the 651 area code test number in St. Paul, Minnesota for the Minneapolis LATA 628.